Sharon Marshall was the kind of young woman teachers never forgot, brilliant beyond her years, disciplined in everything she touched, and driven by dreams that stretched far beyond the small town where she grew up. She seemed destined for greatness. Classmates admired her quiet confidence, while instructors believed she could accomplish anything she set her mind to. By the time she graduated from high school in 1986, she had already earned a full scholarship to study aerospace engineering, hoping that one day she would help design spacecraft and work for NASA. To everyone around her, Sharon's future looked almost perfect, a future filled with opportunity, ambition, and endless possibilities. But behind that bright smile was a painful secret that no one truly understood, a secret that would quietly begin changing the course of her entire life. But as graduation approached, Sharon found herself carrying a burden she hid from nearly everyone. She was pregnant. Terrified of destroying the future she had worked so hard to build, she concealed the pregnancy until she secretly gave birth. The baby's father never knew a child had been born, and Sharon made the heartbreaking decision to place her newborn son with an adoptive family. It was a sacrifice that shattered her dreams before they had even begun. Instead of walking through the gates of a prestigious university, Sharon walked away from the life she had imagined. The brilliant student with limitless potential disappeared from that path forever, stepping instead into a future filled with uncertainty, where every decision seemed to pull her further away from the destiny she once believed was hers. Trying to leave her painful memories behind, Sharon relocated to Florida with an older man named Franklin Delano Floyd. Two outsiders, their relationship was difficult to understand. Some believed he was a father figure, while others assumed they were romantically involved. Whatever the truth, Frank quickly became the dominant presence in Sharon's life. Although she tried to build a normal future and even developed feelings for another man, fate dealt her another unexpected turn when she became pregnant once again. Just like before, the child's biological father was never told. This time, however, Sharon decided she would keep her baby. In 1988, she welcomed a little boy named Michael Gregory Marshall into the world, determined to give him the love and stability she herself desperately needed. Life, however, was anything but stable. Frank struggled to keep steady employment, often claiming that chronic back pain prevented him from working. Bills piled up, and survival became a daily challenge. To provide for herself and her son, Sharon took a job as an exotic dancer, working long nights while trying to raise Michael during the day. Friends described her as gentle, generous, and endlessly kind despite the hardships surrounding her. But those same friends often noticed something unsettling whenever Frank appeared. He carried an unpredictable temper that seemed to darken every room he entered. While Sharon smiled through her struggles, many quietly wondered if the man standing beside her was slowly becoming the greatest danger she would ever face. Among Sharon's closest friends was a young coworker named Cheryl Commesso. The two women shared long conversations, difficult shifts, and dreams of leaving their troubled lives behind. Cheryl quickly became someone Sharon trusted, but Frank viewed her very differently. Tension between Cheryl and Frank grew with every encounter, fueled by arguments that became increasingly hostile. During a weekend boating trip, those conflicts finally exploded into a heated confrontation that left everyone shaken. Whatever resentment already existed between them only intensified after that day, setting events into motion that no one could stop. Soon afterward, Cheryl reported Sharon for secretly underreporting part of her income while receiving government assistance. The investigation meant Sharon lost the financial support she desperately relied on to care for Michael. Frank was furious. Witnesses later recalled seeing him confront Cheryl outside the nightclub where both women worked, striking her during an angry argument before storming away. Days later, Cheryl vanished without a trace. Her abandoned car was discovered near an airport, but Cheryl herself had simply disappeared. Detectives questioned Frank and Sharon, yet without enough evidence, no charges could be filed. Even so, suspicion followed them wherever they went. Rather than stay and answer questions, the pair quietly packed their belongings, adopted new identities, and disappeared, leaving behind a mystery that would remain unsolved for years. The couple eventually settled in Oklahoma, where Sharon once again found work dancing while trying to provide a better life for little Michael. Despite constantly moving from place to place, Sharon somehow managed to make friends wherever she went. Her warmth drew people toward her, but Frank's reputation followed him just as easily. Co-workers described him as controlling, aggressive, and deeply intimidating. Arguments involving Frank became almost routine, and more than one person warned Sharon that she deserved far better than the man who seemed determined to dominate every aspect of her life. Behind closed doors, Sharon quietly admitted to trusted friends that she wanted to leave him. She had even begun imagining a completely different future with someone new, but fear always held her back. She believed that if she ever tried to escape, Frank would never let her go peacefully. Then, without warning, tragedy struck. One night, Sharon was found critically injured beside a highway after what appeared to be a hit-and-run accident. She was rushed to the hospital unconscious, fighting for her life. Friends visited often, encouraged by signs that she seemed to be slowly improving. Hope began to return as doctors monitored her recovery. But suddenly, Frank refused to allow anyone else to see her. No explanation was given. Only days later, Sharon unexpectedly died from her injuries. Doctors examining her body noticed older bruises that raised disturbing questions about possible abuse, and some believed the fatal injuries didn't fully match a typical traffic accident. Official answers never came, yet many who knew Sharon were convinced that whatever happened that night was no accident at all. Following Sharon's death, Frank wasted little time attempting to collect money from a large life insurance policy that had been purchased only months earlier. But as insurance companies reviewed his paperwork, they discovered something strange. The names, identities, and social security numbers he provided simply didn't match. Forced to reveal his real identity, Frank Delano Floyd unknowingly opened the door to a past he had spent years hiding. Investigators uncovered an astonishing criminal history stretching back decades, including violent crimes, kidnappings, prison escapes, robberies, and years spent living under countless fake names. The quiet painter Sharon had lived beside was, in reality, a dangerous fugitive who had been running from justice for years. Authorities quickly tracked Frank down and arrested him. For Sharon's friends, it felt like the first glimpse of justice, even if they still couldn't prove he had caused her death. Before disappearing, Frank had surrendered Michael to social services, where the frightened little boy entered foster care. His new family noticed heartbreaking signs of trauma almost immediately. Michael barely spoke, communicating mostly through frightened screams and quiet moans. Frank insisted on seeing the child, claiming to be his biological father. But a DNA test eventually revealed that he wasn't related to Michael at all. The visits stopped, but the questions only multiplied. If Frank wasn't Michael's father, then who exactly was he? And if he had lied about something so fundamental, what other horrifying secrets was he still hiding? The answers would uncover one of the most shocking true crime stories investigators had ever encountered. Frank's imprisonment should have marked the end of the nightmare, but for Michael, it was only the beginning. After serving several years behind bars, Frank walked free in 1994 with a single obsession: getting the little boy back. He knew the courts would never return Michael to him, so he carefully planned another crime. On a quiet September morning, Frank entered Michael's elementary school and demanded to see the principal. Within minutes, he pulled out a handgun and forced the terrified principal to hand Michael over. Under the threat of death, the educator was driven several miles away, tied to a tree, and left helpless as Frank vanished with the 6-year-old child. By the time authorities realized what had happened, the pair had disappeared without a trace, triggering a nationwide search filled with fear and desperation. Nearly 2 months later, police finally located Frank hundreds of miles away in Kentucky. He was arrested without incident, but Michael was nowhere to be found. Investigators searched every place Frank had visited, hoping to find some sign that the little boy was still alive. Instead, they found only silence. During questioning, Frank remained cold and emotionless, refusing to answer even the simplest questions about Michael's whereabouts. His chilling lack of concern haunted investigators. The child who had already endured years of fear had simply vanished again, and this time, no one knew whether he was hiding somewhere, or whether something far more tragic had already happened. While Frank awaited trial for kidnapping Michael, another shocking discovery brought detectives back to a mystery many believed would never be solved. Deep in a wooded area of Florida, skeletal remains were uncovered, hidden beneath thick vines and years of overgrown vegetation. The victim had suffered a brutal beating before being shot twice in the head. At first, investigators had no idea who the woman was, but months later, an abandoned truck once used by Frank revealed a horrifying secret. Inside was an envelope containing dozens of disturbing photographs showing a woman bound, beaten, and tortured before her death. The images were unlike anything investigators had ever seen, documenting unimaginable, cruelty with terrifying detail. Forensic experts carefully compared the injuries visible in the photographs with the recovered skeleton. Every detail matched perfectly. The unidentified victim was finally confirmed to be Cheryl Commesso, a young woman who had disappeared years earlier after her violent confrontation with Frank. The discovery ended one mystery, but opened another far darker one. Frank was convicted of Cheryl's murder and sentenced to death. Yet investigators couldn't ignore another unsettling detail hidden within the photographs. Among the disturbing evidence were older images showing a frightened young girl being abused. No one knew who she was or why Frank possessed those photographs. Detectives had uncovered another victim, but her identity remained one of the greatest mysteries in the entire investigation. Years passed before investigators finally uncovered the truth behind that unknown girl. As they dug deeper into Frank's past, they discovered a forgotten chapter that completely changed everything they thought they knew about Sharon Marshall. Decades earlier, while living under a false identity, Frank had married a woman named Sandy Chipman. When Sandy spent a short time in jail, she trusted Frank to care for her children until she returned. But when she was released, both Frank and the children had vanished. He had disappeared without leaving a single clue. For years, Sandy desperately searched for her missing son and daughters, eventually locating some of them through adoption records and social services. One child, however, remained missing longer than all the others, her oldest daughter, Suzanne. The breakthrough finally came through DNA and years of painstaking investigation. Sharon Marshall had never truly been Sharon Marshall at all. Her real name was Suzanne Marie Sevakis, the little girl Frank had kidnapped from her own mother years earlier. He had stolen her childhood, changed her identity repeatedly, and raised her while pretending to be her father. As she grew older, investigators concluded that Frank manipulated, abused, and controlled Suzanne until she believed she had nowhere else to go. Eventually, he even married the young woman he had raised, hiding behind another web of lies. The revelation stunned seasoned detectives. The woman everyone knew as Sharon had unknowingly spent her entire life trapped inside a nightmare created by the very man who stole her from her family. Suddenly, every chapter of Sharon's life looked completely different. The brilliant student whose future had once seemed limitless had never truly been free to choose her own path. Every move, every new identity, every sudden relocation had been carefully orchestrated by Frank to keep her isolated from the truth. Friends remembered how she often appeared anxious whenever he was nearby, as though she were constantly afraid of making the wrong move. Investigators now believed those fears were painfully justified. Sharon's dreams of attending college, building a career, and raising her son in peace had all been stolen by a man who had controlled her since childhood. Even after investigators uncovered Suzanne's true identity, one heartbreaking mystery remained unanswered: her death. Although many believed Frank was responsible, prosecutors never found enough evidence to convict him of murdering Sharon. The suspicious injuries, the unexplained hospital restrictions, and the timing of her sudden decline all pointed toward unanswered questions that would never be fully resolved. Frank refused to speak about what happened during Sharon's final days, maintaining his silence while carrying those secrets to prison. For Sharon's biological family, learning the truth brought both relief and unimaginable grief. They had spent years searching for a missing daughter, never realizing she had lived under another name, before losing her life far too soon. The final chapter of this extraordinary case brought one last devastating revelation. After decades of refusing to cooperate, Frank eventually admitted that Michael was dead. He confessed to killing the little boy while they were on the run, ending years of desperate hope that Michael might somehow still be alive. He claimed to have left the child's body in a remote area, but despite extensive searches, investigators were never able to recover Michael's remains. His family was denied the simple comfort of bringing him home, forced instead to live with unanswered questions and unimaginable heartbreak. Today, the story of Sharon Marshall, whose real name was Suzanne Marie Sevakis, stands as one of the most disturbing and heartbreaking cases in modern true crime history. It is not simply a story about murder, but about a stolen childhood, stolen identity, shattered dreams, and generations of lives forever changed by one man's cruelty. Frank Delano Floyd carried countless secrets to the end, and some of them may never be fully uncovered. Yet Suzanne's true name has finally been restored, ensuring that she is remembered not as the identity forced upon her, but as the little girl who deserved a lifetime of love, freedom, and hope. Sometimes the greatest tragedy isn't only the crime itself, it's how long the truth can remain hidden before the world finally sees it.